Welcome to Connect, Curate, Create, where we're on a journey through the arts and creative industries. I'm your host, Dr. Tim Butcher. If you're anything like me, you love learning about art and creativity. In each episode, I ask artists and creatives how they navigate life, work, and more besides. They generously share their stories and offer invaluable insights that you and I can put into action. As the author of Creative Work Beyond Precarity, I blend my mission to give artists a fair go with my academic smarts, to ask the questions that draw out lessons we can all learn from.
What happened one day was I went to an audition for a show and I just kind of left feeling a little bit flat. And then that same day I was teaching and I left feeling so lit up that I could hardly sleep. And so I realized in that moment, if I was going to do anything with dance, it would be to teach. It's almost like the roles that aren't advertised get talked about in these circles. They're the gems that, they exist, and they're the quirky roles. They're the weird ones that we don't really know how to hire for this role, but we need this person. You might just meet the person hiring for that role and they go, "You're the person." Yeah, it's okay to not know exactly what you're meant to do in your career, but whatever feels good at the time will make sense eventually, one day, and robust.
In this episode, I talk with Katie Fraser, a self-described mover and shaker based in Melbourne, Victoria. Katie shares some of the treasures from her journey, from practicing and teaching dance to applying her creativity to business. She offers super positive insights into the joys of sharing our love of the arts, embracing non-traditional career opportunities, and the positive power of intentionality. Be sure to check out the show notes for highlights and links that you can use to shape your own journey. And if you enjoy this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell your friends about Connect, Curate, Create. Welcome back to the podcast. So this week I'm speaking with Katie Fraser. It's another remote recording. I'm here in Tassie and Katie's in Melbourne, Victoria. And Katie and I have known each other a short while, and I think Katie's got something really interesting and unique to share with us. So I'm really keen to get into this. So welcome, Katie. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Tim. Glad to be here.
So we were talking before, and I was asking you, how do I introduce you? And you said mover and shaker, and I love it. It's a great way to think about how we actually are in the arts or in the creative industries. We need to shake things up, I reckon. So. If I were to ask you, what do you do to shake things up? Let's go right in at the deep end. What do you mean by mover and shaker?
Well, I'm a mover, I guess, by trade. I'm a dancer, a professionally trained dancer who has moved a lot around the world. And I'm a shaker in that I've also had administrative roles where I've come with fresh eyes and a fluffy tail and really shaken things up in ways that I guess were unexpected, that prove that someone from a creative background really does have a place in an office setting as well as a dance studio. So I think that sums it up.
Oh, great stuff. Yeah. So let's go back to your dance background. So it's interesting that you bring that what you've learned through dance and that sort of the yourself as a creative, how you bring that into a business setting. And so we'll perhaps come to the business setting a bit later. But where did it all begin for you with dance?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up dancing, and it was just kind of one of those things I worked really hard at, but it was good at and fairly naturally. I guess I finished school with entrance to Auckland University to study, business and arts and a drama scholarship, and I could have stayed in New Zealand. But I also was offered a place to dance full-time and train full-time here in Melbourne. So I just leapt at that opportunity because dance really is my first love. I do ballet, tap, jazz, contemporary, musical theatre, a little bit of hip-hop. I'm not going to say that I'm much of a hip-hopper because I'm more of a technician. But I love, the discipline that comes with dance, the creative expression, the artistry, the, technique. I often say ballet is the foundations. It's like your maths to your academia. It's you get the basics, you can add on, and then your English is your artistry. You can add some beautiful words to, really embody the movement. That's been my metaphor for dance, I guess. And I've got to say, I really took it as far as I possibly could. I'm so proud of really taking a chance and in a performing arts career, and my parents completely backed me. I decided, after that first year of full-time study, that enabled to be employable, I wanted to become more versatile. And so I really thought, pivoting into a second year study where I was studying acting and singing as well would help me be that versatile performer. And I guess it really gave me a perspective on the performing arts industry that I probably wouldn't have had unless I'd gone through that full-time training. But there's, ways that could have been a bit more successful as well in retrospect. But that's kind of a snapshot of dance for me. And it really did help me solidify my creative voice that otherwise I think would have been lost if I had gone and stayed at home and gone to uni and done all the right things. But I was able to become a teacher, and that, I think, what happened one day was I went to an audition for a show and I just kind of left feeling a little bit flat. And then that same day I was teaching and I left feeling so lit up that I could hardly sleep. And so I realized in that moment, if I was going to do anything with dance, it would be to teach and to really foster other people, be their cheerleader, be in their corner more than my own. So, yeah.
Wow, that's fabulous. Fabulous. Yeah. So, okay. Right. So much there to unpack, but I think it's wonderful that you are so self-reflective in how you understood that those early stages of your journey, and these sort of moments of discovery that we all have in our practice is okay. Actually, I really enjoy doing this, but I've taken it as far as I can. Where next? And so that day, that moment that you had where you went into the dance studio with your students, and then you came out enlightened. That sounds fabulous. I mean, it just, so as a dance teacher, how do you, who do you work with, and how do you work with them?
Yeah, I have worked with all age groups. I think my youngest was like a 2-year-old, and the oldest lady I taught was 75, an absolute weapon. So I think my preference is to teach kind of preteens or late teens where they've kind of gone, I'm good at this. I want to really work hard at this. And I show up because I want to, not because mum and dad paid for my term fees. I think, being able to teach dance styles across the board has been really interesting. It also took me into fitness, and I was teaching bar fitness, but also dance fitness as well, because, as an adult. It's hard enough to get to the studio, let alone, really perform. So offering fitness dance classes was a really good medium for people to show up and, have a good time. So I think, it's such a gift to be able to teach any age and every age, because at the end of the day, I think, we're all born kind of dancing. Like, we're walking and running and we're shaking our booties and our nappies, and we all kind of know how fun it is to move. And then that really gets ignited in every class. So being able to step out of that studio and feel that lightness, that joy, that fun that has been brought to someone's lives where maybe before going into the studio they weren't having a great time. It's a real gift. And I think what's great about teaching for me is that it's kind of like a trade where anywhere I am in the world, I can teach, or even online. I have been teaching occasionally online as well, which, as a global community is so accessible for everybody. And what a great time to live in when we can do all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, so adaptation is a key theme that's emerged already here, Katie, that I'm sensing, and adaptation and a portfolio career in that, as a freelance dance teacher, seeing other opportunities. But before we get into that, there's something you just touched on there about the joy of dance and movement and moving the body. And I have to, I do this with most guests where I relate it back to myself, and I'm pretty sure that there'll be listeners out there who have similar experiences of me. But, dance, I've always found difficult, or I did used to. And I found movement through practices like yoga and Feldenkrais and so on. And only in recent years have I begun to address my own personal well-being. Have I felt the confidence to, as you say, stand in the kitchen whilst watching an ad on YouTube by Canva, which every time it comes on, and this isn't a paid promotion for Canva, but every time the ad comes on, I shake my booty and
move and shake.
But I would never have had the confidence to go to a dance class per se. You said there's a diversity of people. Yeah. So what can we do to get into the dance studio? How might we do that? Because there's clearly well-being benefits.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, for one example, I taught a teenage girl who felt far too self-conscious to go to a studio. So I did 6 months of lessons with her just online, and she built up her basics, and now she is thriving in a dance studio, actually in the US. So she just needed a little bit of guidance to learn the basics, build a bit of confidence, build a bit of terminology, and then step into the class. And that was a really great pathway for her. Whereas for someone who's never danced before, maybe a dance fitness class or some kind of movement class where, you walk out afterwards feeling good. And that's whatever that is when it comes to well-being for you on that day is wonderful. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to ace it or, have any expectations of what it looks like, but what it feels like is super important. And that's something that I end up teaching my kids down the line, where if they feel good when they're performing on stage, then their audience is also going to feel good. And there's this energetic exchange of just positivity that wouldn't otherwise be there. And that is great artistry. That's great performance. That is why dance survives and will continue to survive. We feel good. And I feel good teaching. So get in a studio or get online, give a yoga class a go. Even again, there's heaps online. There's a lot of opportunities for people that and corporates as well, and they've got wellness credit to be able to spend. Like, go spend it on moving and see, just try it out, see if it resonates with you. But I think too, if you've had a dance background, your expectations for that quality mentorship are higher. So shop around a little. It's okay to try lots of different instructors. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, right. I will. Thank you, Katie. Yeah, I will. It's one of those things in my life I sort of always wished I had done, and I haven't. So yeah, I'm going to give it a crack. But I reckon there's something in there about embracing our vulnerabilities, and with your dance training, I guess it's been, as you said, if you're performing on a stage for others, for an audience, the audience is going to embrace that, embrace you and your performance, and that's something that a previous podcast guest has talked about, Kelsey, in episode 2, about how that translates then into the business world, and how that gives you confidence when you are working in different domains. So it's, for want of a better term, transferable skills, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think that's why anybody and everyone can appreciate watching art or witnessing art in any form, because it separates your reality from you for that duration of time, and it just releases something. It brings some kind of ease to your life, which is hard to find, and giving yourself permission to go and sit in a theater and just let go for a few hours while you're watching a ballet. Like, what a treat to yourself. And or if it's going to see a movie, or if it's going to the National Gallery, like, there's something about giving yourself permission to go do that is so critical. No one's going to tell you to go and witness these things. You really have to be quite proactive in that. People will always say, go travel, go move house, go do all of these things that are, perceived as, ticks on a ladder to life. It's really, it has to be self-devised and self-appreciated to feel something other than this reality. And I think art is the gateway.
The arts are more accessible than ever. We might not all recognize that, and I think there's still a lot of work to be done within the arts to help us to not just to invite us in, I suppose. So you mentioned the ballet. I have been to the ballet twice in my life, and I have to say, at times in my life when I wouldn't have thought it was the sort of thing a working class bloke like me would have done. And, when I was much younger and going because of my partner at the time loved it, and it just blew me away. Yeah, it evoked emotions and feelings that I hadn't embraced before, I suppose, or in other spheres, it's difficult to embrace. So that is the power of the arts, isn't it?
Yeah. I remember sitting next to a gentleman who had never been to the ballet, and he turned to me and said, "Oh, they're going to start singing?" No, this is not an opera. But he was taken by the storytelling and the sets and all the rest of it. He's like, "Oh yeah, I get it, but I really was expecting them to start singing," and I thought it was such a sweet thing that obviously he had been dragged along to the theatre, but he got something out of it that he wasn't expecting, and that's such, like yourself, like, it's such a good example of just try it out, just try it on for size, and no education is wasted, particularly creative arts education, I think, we can explore different paradigms thanks to getting a little uncomfortable from time to time. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, let's do it. Katie, I did cut you off and you were going to talk about transferable skills again. And and I do want to get back to this idea of your own journey and adaptation. But yeah, look, again, asking you before the interview about, how could I introduce you? And another term you came up with was Gypsy. So I know I'm friends with you and your husband, Mark, and Mark is a digital nomad. Mark's been my understanding is you two have been traveling around the world long before the term digital nomad was ever invented. And so as you've traveled the world in different places, and this is where you've taken your dance teaching and taken your skills and transferred them into other areas as you've moved around the world. So as a gypsy and moving from place to place, and you mentioned also, teaching online as well, how does your practice, how does your teaching, everything else, how does it travel with you, and what does it look like when you're on the move?
Yeah. So life as a gypsy is really fun. You kind of just, back yourself, and you throw yourself into new scenarios and situations, hoping for the best, and seeing the good in others, that they will take you on and help you out throughout as well. So I have been really privileged to be in my relationship, as you mentioned, where we have been traveling for probably the best part of 9 years, like just for the fun of it. And we've prioritized that over work, but have found that by default, our careers have definitely progressed in ways that are better than we could have ever curated ourselves. So I highly recommend anyone that's listening in their 20s in particular, if you're in a relationship and want to do it together, awesome. It's a massive test. But if you're not by yourself, and getting uncomfortable in a different part of the world is a driving force for how it succeeded for us. I think in terms of work opportunities in the arts, I have found that I've been able to work at festivals, and that's been really fun because it's an administrative side, but also the live event side of it is unreal. And being able to see how, like the Toronto International Film Festival, for example, how that machine operates is just something I wouldn't have been able to experience unless I, was living there on that side of the world. And I thankfully got that job thanks to having awards experience in Australia. But I think you kind of get to a point where you have enough in your backpack of life experience and different jobs and different scenarios that I think, you're able to just rock up somewhere new and go, hey, I can give this a go. How about it? And I've been fortunate enough where that's worked to my favor, that gumption. And I've had some really incredible managers and leaders that have welcomed me with open arms. And I think I've met and exceeded expectations because I'm such a non-traditional hire.
Non-traditional hire. Now, this is a common term, I think, in business, but it might not necessarily be familiar to everyone listening in. What do you mean by that? I mean, it's quite new to me.
Sure. So I guess it's the opposite of what you'd expect. A kind of trajectory would be in a career where, after you finish school, you go to university, you get a degree, you find an internship, and then you stick it out and you climb a ladder, and then you move to another place and you stay there, and you're in chunks of decades, and then you don't really get to leapfrog roles. You have to earn them based on whatever anybody else thinks at that bracket. Whereas I've been able to somehow have an opportunity, despite not having a degree, despite not being in workplaces for several years. And I think that's been a bit of a superpower for me in retrospect, where I've been able to jump into leadership roles for, contracts or a couple of years, a year, and then I'm able to experience such a smorgasbord career compared to what I guess was expected of me. And I really did set out in my early 20s with this whole idea that I would have a smorgasbord career, and it's worked for me. I think, I wouldn't have been so bold unless I had taken that initiative and had that intention before it all evolved. And, one of my good friends in Canada kind of turned around one day when I was having a bit of a panic, and I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I thought I was doing this thing and it's kind of working out, but I don't get it. And he's like, it's okay. Like, Steve Jobs says something along the lines of how the dots connect in reverse. I think, it's this whole notion of you can't connect these dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. And having that kind of cuddle of thought really helped me remember, it's okay to not know exactly what you're meant to do in your career, but whatever feels good at the time will make sense eventually one day and reverse. So, very non-traditional.
Yeah, look, you've used two terms there. The cuddle, I thought that was lovely. Definitely trademark that one. And also, I think smorgasbord career needs to be trademarked as well. That one is all Katie's. There's a whole book there, I reckon. Smorgasbord career. This is it, right? So I speak to so many people, so many artists, creatives who are doing very similar things to yourself. But as you say, it's very difficult to make sense of it all because there are so many moving parts. And there are those moments when it does feel like you can't quite get a foothold, or, do I go in this direction? Where's it going to lead me? Is it going to take me away from my original practice, and so on? So I do think this is very much the world we live in today. I think my own experience of teaching business school students over the last 20 years and seeing how, really just the lack of traditional careers, and that the non-traditional career is actually the norm now. And this is what educators are preparing students for, right from primary school. So I guess, what your practice exemplifies that. And what I get from you is that it's brought you unexpected opportunities by being intentional and by being so open to those opportunities, and being open to the possibility of not knowing where it's going, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And, every opportunity that's come up has been good and it's felt good. And then there, ones recently actually that have popped up that I kind of was like, oh, okay, I'll just give it a go. And it didn't feel good to begin with. I tried it out and it didn't feel like. Point is that when you have this intention of, let's see how it goes, let's do things that sound fun, then they'll end up being pretty great. And I have like this overarching theme in my life where I'm like, you know what? To me, life is like this treasure box, and I found it. It's my life. And I get to put treasures in that treasure box throughout my life. And sometimes they're super shiny, and sometimes they're not so great, but they're all memories that end up in my treasure box. And one day I'm going to be able to look back on all of them, or any day I can look back on my memories in my treasure box and be really stoked with my life. And not to sound morbid or anything, but I think that's the point of it. Just collect memories, collect jobs, collect moments, collect troubles that you feel good about. And it usually always works out. And you already know if it's not going to be something that you want to do, you do, and just trust that. As I said before, when I didn't trust that, it didn't work out. So it's just a redirect to remember to collect, worldly treasures on my Gypsy travels.
Wonderful. It's a great metaphor. And I mean, so many metaphors in there and they all work together so well. I suppose, so the most recent work that you've been doing is in philanthropy. Is that right? Yeah. So that was an opportunity that you embraced.
Yeah. I think, it kind of came out of nowhere in a lot of ways. And honestly, I didn't know what philanthropy was. I had a massive learning curve, and now I have a huge appreciation for philanthropy and the arts. But yeah, it was for ballet, an art form I'm, will always have a long love affair with. So it was, my work was driven by my innate love for dance, but it was also recognizing that throughout my whole career so far, I am celebrating excellence, and I am cheerleading in some capacity. And I just loved that the whole machine of philanthropy is about people cheering on, people celebrating this excellence, this beauty, this art form that, it can, I think, stand the test of time. It was such a special role. So I think, ballet to me, I think you were saying earlier, like it can be quite inaccessible. And I think that's where philanthropy also helps educate and nourish, like the education piece around arts for people that would love to give, would love to like see it continue, but don't really understand it. And it's their way to learn more about it and get closer to it and feel like they're making a difference in the world as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so nourishing, right? It's so nourishing to fill your soul with things that are beautiful and things that matter. And this is just one avenue for it.
Yeah, indeed. And so for me, it's the if you like, the state of the arts. There's less and less public money for the arts, and something like ballet would have been traditionally very reliant on public money. And so philanthropy is really, really important. And not just to think of philanthropy as, there've been these big philanthropic funds, but fundraising, I guess, would have been part of your job. I'm guessing, sorry, but you can correct me.
Yeah, a big part. Fundraising was a big part of the role. And we would host events where philanthropists could bring their friends along as well to kind of get a sneak behind the curtain and raise funds as well. I think that's the beauty of philanthropy in the arts, is it's very much always going to be there, and you can invite yourself in, but you will often get an opportunity to go along with someone else that is already kind of stewarded into the world and see if that aligns with you. And if it does, then you're in this family, this community of supporters for life.
So, so for me, Katie, the research that I've done, where I've looked at the state of funding it for the arts, and there is still a lot of money, public money, going into the arts. I think the new policy launched last year by the current federal government in Australia is phenomenal in many ways, but also at the same time it is encouraging of new ways of trying to fund the arts. And so philanthropy really does come to the fore. And I think what I'm really interested in is how we can rethink philanthropy, not just as something that big donors do. And like you say, so it's about ordinary, everyday philanthropists like you and me who enjoy something in particular in the arts and want to give to it. And as you suggested there, take others along and invite them in. And I suppose, as to think of it from the other side of it, as individual artists or creatives, how can we rethink the ways that we can fund our work? And rethinking the philanthropy model for me is a really interesting way to enable us all to rethink how money flows so that we can continue to do the things we love. So at that highest institutional level, these things are taking shape and keeping those institutions going. And I think we could apply similar logic to just our own individual practices as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an education piece, really, where younger generations need to be informed about philanthropic practices at all scales. And, I would often speak with donors, even those that are donating $100, they get a really good kick out of doing their bit to keep the lights on. And they would often say, I'm so sorry, I want to be able to donate more, but I just have to give something. And I was like, no, quite literally, you keep the lights on with any donation. I mean, every donation over $2 is tax deductible here in Australia. And it's just a matter of knowing that it all counts and it is all a vote for the economy that you want. We vote with our money where we want our resources, whatever food you eat, wherever you travel, whatever you do in your life where you spend money is very much a vote for what you believe in and what you want more of. So that fueled a lot of those smaller end donations, but it was often older communities that wanted to donate and they need to educate their sons and daughters and their grandchildren and kind of pass the baton on in those ways that we see so beautifully done in sport, where, AFL tickets are generational gifts, and we should have that in the arts where you're the inner seat, is passed down the generations, because how magical would that be? To have that family story, around Christmas tables. And I really believe in educating the artists as well about philanthropic support, because a lot of the time, I talk to a dancer or I'll talk to an artist and they were like, so what do you guys do? What is it? And I'm like, oh no, we are literally, helping you get a new pair of shoes or whatever it was to get you on stage. And that reciprocal rights of this energy exchange is probably the other side of the education piece that we really need to embrace. I think there's a real opportunity for donors of all ages to create those meaningful relationships with artists where there is that that exchange, because money is energy at the end of the day. It's an emotional frequency, and we need to, give and take and receive, and this cycle of beauty and pleasure and reciprocal recognition, because one supports the other and supports the other, supports the other, supports the other, right? It's just such a special thing.
Yeah, it is, and we see it in other forms in the creative industries. I think patronage on YouTube. So the creator generation now, have really embraced that idea of patronage, and it's. I think a lot of it is being able to ask the question, and I think people in who work in roles like the one that you've had just recently, it's doing a lot of that work for the artist, and then to understand why it's so important. Look, it's a work in progress.
And at the end of the day, a lot of philanthropic support creates new art. It's not just a matter of the classics and supporting current artists. It's about the next generation and the next, whatever art form it is, the next great thing. And we need that support to have a legacy on our time on this planet. We get to give at this time where, in dance, contemporary works are highly valued and highly regarded as stuff to really work on. So we need to invest in those choreographers to put their stamp on the world and define this time and the trajectory of our, existence. It's fun, it's exciting, and that's such a privilege to be a part of. When in 20, 30, 40 years time, you can go, oh, it's a little bit a part of that. That's pretty magical.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, very true. I mean, I love how you describe the metaphors you use. I think, it sums up the idea of the arts as an ecology, all of these, all of these different pieces in communication with each other, and we as being part of that. And so I guess what's I find interesting is you're, again, coming back to you and your ability to, the things you've learned through dance, how you bring those into roles like the ones you just had, but also making connections. It seems to me, Katie, you make connections that not all of us would necessarily see. So something you've told me about recently is that some of the events you've been to recently, networking events. There was one International Women's Day, was it you were at recently? And I suppose what I'm really interested in is the power of mentoring. And you've talked a lot about yourself as a teacher, an educator, but also what about mentorship in the arts? Is there, how do you see that working?
Yeah, absolutely. I think going to this event was really heartwarming, because it was all about mentorship and how you can give and receive mentoring no matter what kind of where you are in your career. And that really landed for me, because I felt like, I don't know, like a bit of an imposter in that. I don't feel like a subject matter expert on anything. I just have a lot of experience, but that is still really valuable to give. And so I've been in a fortunate position where I've had a couple of interns or a couple of assistants I've brought into a business and helped kind of with the actual workload. But what I'm finding is that when you talk with other people, no matter what job or industry they've been in, they have a story, they have a lifestyle that sheds some light on things that maybe you haven't crossed paths with naturally, and it shifts your paradigm in a way that maybe something like travel would as well. It's those conversations of giving and receiving some kind of clarity. And I think that is quite philanthropic in a way. It's, being able to recognize that women particularly in the workplace. Find it quite tough to find women that are in leadership roles or executive leadership roles that want to have those conversations as well. But there are forums out there where they can find those leaders, and they are so willing to have those conversations, and it paves pathways for people like myself who are still kind of climbing. And but then when you're at the top, you can kind of pull people up as well. And I think because I've had such a privileged kind of experience with several managers, male and female, but who have lifted me up and believed in me and kind of taken a punt where I've turned around and been like, oh, thanks for that. Thanks for taking a punt on me. And they're like, no, I'm glad I did, because not only did you meet expectations, you exceeded them. And I really think that actually goes back to my dancer brain, where I'm just like, I can always improve. There's always a new technique. There's always a way to practice something better. And just having someone that supports that and also reels it in, like, hey, okay, chill out. You need to refocus. Your energy is such a beautiful connection to have with someone in your workplace or someone outside of your workplace, just continuing to rediscover ways of doing life, filling that treasure chest. People all have a great story.
And it is. It's being able to be brave enough to go out there, to break that. To break the isolation. Not all of us work in isolated ways, but when we live and work in a world in which we generally are increasingly individualized. Our artists, creatives, these are individualistic practices. And so to find ways to come together to mentoring or learning events or whatever it is that brings people together, and then to learn from others. And I think what you've alluded to there particularly is the role of leadership, and leadership can come in many forms, and that's where you meet the people who can perhaps guide you in a direction or give you the confidence to go in a direction that you've not necessarily considered.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's almost like the roles that aren't advertised get talked about in these circles. They're the gems that, they exist, and then the quirky roles, they're the weird ones that we don't really know how to hire for this role, but we need this person. You might just meet the person hiring for that role and they go, you're the person. And it's just a matter of getting yourself out there and knowing that, if you don't speak up about your story or your desires or where you have been and it hasn't worked or whatever the context, then you're actually doing a disservice to yourself and to the community, the greater good, by not sharing that vulnerability, as you say. Because someone else needs to hear it, or someone else really wants to help you, or someone else will hear it and go, oh, that's not for me, and go and find their tribe, on the other side of the room. And that's okay. We all find our tribes by connecting. And I think that's what's so beautiful about your podcast, Tim. It's like you're really bringing all of those conversations to light as well. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you. And look, thank you for your time, for all of your insights. I mean, there's so much here. I think that so many people could take away from what you've shared with us. So look, Katie, this has been terrific. I've really enjoyed it. And I'm pretty sure we'll be doing doing the follow-up episode some point in the future, because you're always moving and shaking, and you'll come back with even fresher insights the next time. So thank you so much, Katie.
I love that, and I would love to reconnect down the line. But thank you for such a quality conversation today. It's been my absolute privilege. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Connect, Curate, Create. I hope you found inspiration and insights that you can apply to your own creative work. For highlights and links, check out the show notes, and be sure to follow us on your favourite podcast player so you never miss an episode. Tune in next time as I continue to explore life and work in the arts.